Empowered people make informed decisions that lead to living a life without regret. This is Sarah Kaki and Shauna Woods from Atlanta Divorce Law Group, and this is the Happily Ever After Divorce Podcast. Welcome to the Happily Ever After Divorce Podcast. I'm attorney Sarah Kaki with Atlanta Divorce Law Group, and I'm joined by our very own managing partner, Shauna Woods. Shauna, today we are going to talk about narcissists playing in the gray. So what do we mean by that? Well, one thing we know about narcissists is there is never really any clear, direct communication or direction sometimes of where your relationship's leading with them, where the conversation leads with them, or any clarity on what are they really after. And a lot of our clients who are struggling emotionally with a spouse that is a narcissist seem to feel that nothing's ever been clear enough for them in the black or in the white to know, was this exactly how I'm describing it, or is it how it was in my head? Is this really what the narcissist said? Is this really what the narcissist spouse meant? What did I say? What did I do? Everything just constantly feels like it's blurry. It's in the gray. Nothing's really clear. And neither you or I are psychologists or therapists, but having worked more of these cases, there is definitely a pattern we've noticed that narcissists like to keep things in a gray area where it's hard to ever pinpoint anything to say objectively, this was right, this was wrong, you violated this rule, you upheld this rule. They're just pushing boundaries and making more gray space.
Yes. Absolutely. And I do want to point out that when we talk about narcissists, right, like you just said, we are not psychologists. We've just had a lot of experience with people who are experiencing narcissistic behavior from their spouse.
Right.
That doesn't mean that we have the ability to diagnose anybody. But the truth of the matter is you can really take these and kind of apply them to any kind of manipulative personality.
Or any high conflict personality.
Any high conflict personality. And when we talked about, talking about people who have these issues about playing in the gray, one of the things that really came to my mind is a phrase that I would hear sometimes from a person in particular would say, what do you think? Mm-hmm. I'm trying to nail them down on yes or no on this. Do you feel this way? Do you feel this way? You acted this way, and this is what I'm feeling. And instead of saying, here's what that meant, or here's how I feel, they'll take it and say, what do you think? So that they can turn that, right? And whatever you think, manipulate those thoughts, right, or manipulate their actions to fit what you're quote unquote thinking. The other thing you said was really important is pushing boundaries, right? When we have the law, which is what we do, right? Our actual area of expertise is the law. And one of the reasons I love the law so much is there are rules. You have a set of rules that says, all right, here's how you act in court. Here's what happens, with certain things. Now, certain rules that we have, legal rules, can be open to interpretation. And that's one of the reasons that narcissists love to play in those areas, right, to try to get their version and their interpretation to be the way the law looks at it, right? If you don't have really strong, this is, you can do X, but you cannot do Y, they're going to blow past X,
right,
and then start questioning why you can't do Y. Right. So when we say start playing in the gray in our world, it's they're trying to manipulate the legal system to their best advantage. Now, part of me in my litigation brain says that's not completely wrong.
Right.
Right. Because I'm trying to tell a story and not necessarily manipulate, but I'm trying to influence, right, the fact finder or the facts to a particular thing into the situation that I want to be to advocate for our clients. So what is the difference there? What is the difference between what I'm doing advocating and what a narcissist is doing?
I think the narcissist is pushing enough of the boundary to their advantage where they are recreating a whole different reality. Whereas you're advocating for the best, if it's a child custody situation, you're advocating for the priorities of the client. And if that's the best interest of the children, that's what you're pushing for. You're looking at the whole picture and seeing how will everybody come out on top from this, and then advising the client. Narcissist is only advocating a narrative that is a false sense of reality and pushing the boundaries as far as they can and enrolling as many people into that narrative as they can. And when we say they play in the gray, is nothing's ever clear. When somebody's advocating for you as an attorney and they're trying to find the loopholes, or they're trying to find in the law, or trying to find more ways to create advantageous position for their client, at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, we haven't done our job right if we haven't brought clarity to the situation. If our client should know where they stand, the other side should know where they stand, parties should know where their rights are, where their opportunities lie, where the boundaries are. But a narcissist will perpetually keep everything in the gray, and nothing will ever be clear. And if let's take divorce law out of it for a second, just think about it through relationships. If you've ever been in a relationship with a narcissist, if you have a family member that's a narcissist, a friend that's a narcissist, it's that person in your life where you don't really ever know where you stand. And you don't ever really know, did I do something wrong? Did that person do something wrong, when things get fuzzy? Because communication is so unclear, and usually it's manipulative. So you feel a certain way about it. You can leave a conversation with a narcissist feeling heavy, feeling you might have gotten, dumped on emotionally, but you're not even sure because the communication was never clear. Mm-hmm. And there's never anything direct being said. Everything is beating around the bushes with passive aggressive communication, or, saying indirectly, trying to give you feedback on something you might have done wrong, or putting you down in an indirect way, right? Or making you feel bad about yourself by putting themselves down. Everything is beating around the bushes. And you never really know where the relationship stands, or where you stand, if you've done something wrong or they've done something wrong. And it becomes a crazy maker, because this is what we see in our clients. They tell us the struggles they're going through. And at the end of the day, they say, I'm not sure if I'm going crazy or if this has really happened. You've been with a narcissist for a very long time, and you've been playing in their gray space for a long time, when you don't feel like you even know what's real anymore. Because when, your attorney, your advocate is asking you questions, you actually don't know if you're just making this up or if it really happened, because the narcissist will definitely make you question reality. If you step on my toe, you stepped on my toe, ouch, it hurt. Shauna, don't do that. But if you're constantly, sidestepping around me, making me feel like you're about to step on my toe, but you never really step on my toe, and I'm constantly in a state of tension of, is my foot going to get hurt? I can't really call you out on having done anything wrong. But in my head, I'm either saying, Shauna is trying to provoke me, or I'm really sensitive. Which is it? I don't know. And that's, I think, how the narcissist plays in the gray. It's like, you're never really clear. Am I being too sensitive? Is something wrong with me? Mm-hmm. Or is this person trying to provoke something out of me by just being in the gray and never just really putting their foot down on my toe?
And just never just saying, my intention is to put my foot down on your toe. Right. That is my intention. I'm going to make you crazy because I'm going to just close enough that you think, well, was that an accident? No, that was on purpose.
Right.
You're talking about that crazy making.
Right.
That when you're involved in somebody with an extremely manipulative personality that way, does often happen. And you said something a minute ago, and I wrote it down because it was so poignant. It says involving people in their narrative.
Right.
Right. Not just, I know there's a saying that goes around, I think it's very true, that you are entitled to your own opinion. You are not entitled to your own facts. Mm. And facts are very, like, this paper is yellow. That is a fact, right? This paper is pretty. is my opinion. So knowing the difference, one, is key, because I'm not really sure narcissists know the difference between their facts or just objective facts and their opinion.
Right.
Right. And so when they involve people in their narrative, they don't say, oh, well, Shauna was placing her foot weird and Sarah's getting a little nervous and there's some interaction between the two of them. No, if they were on my side, they would say, look how completely sensitive Sarah is.
Yeah.
This is what's going on. And one of the books that I'm engaging in right now about narcissists calls these people that they're engaging flying monkeys.
Huh.
And it's basically, when we think about, Wizard of Oz and the Wicked Witch, she had people to go out and do her bidding for her, right? And these people aren't really involved in the narrative other than they may have this, maybe their friend, their family member, somebody they truly care about. They're buying into the negative. Yeah. They're buying into that narcissist narrative and they're being weaponized against you.
Right.
Right. So now not only am I creating this situation, now I've involved Tara, Nicole, and everybody else. And so now everybody's walking on eggshells around you. And you're thinking, was this me?
Right.
And it wasn't. And that often happens in relationships because they cannot wait to tell their version of the story so that your version of the story does not get told.
And they're pretty quick and fast about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. While you're sitting there thinking through, am I right? Am I wrong? Because I think any healthy, functioning, adaptive adult takes a minute in any moment of conflict and thinks, what was my responsibility to this? How did I show up? A narcissist doesn't have the capability to do that. So the first thing they're doing is quickly validating themselves through enrolling as many people as they can and then leaving you very isolated.
Exactly. Now, some of these books also talk about the fact that we all have some narcissistic tendencies. I 100%
agree.
We all have them come with birth. It's at what emotional age do we grow out of those tendencies, and what emotional age do these narcissists become stunted in them? And anybody who's worked in any kind of office space or even just spaces where they have to work with others will often see these in workplaces too. Right? Just not in relationships. Right. But all of a sudden there's this little clique over here who hates this little clique over there. It's generally associated around some narcissist, right?
You nailed it, because just, you and I managing a law firm, I can tell you that the hardest team member decisions that we've ever had to make is when somebody is not breaking a policy or a rule that is in the standard employee handbook. And so there's nothing objective, right? They haven't lied, they haven't stolen, they haven't cheated, but you can see them going around in a team or in an organization, just playing in the gray. Causing problems, stirring up things, but nothing is that black or white. Everything is just enough for you to say, like, okay, you just start questioning this person's behavior and then wondering, like, okay, well, do we need to give them more support? Do we need to give them more feedback? Or is there somebody else in the office? It creates an entire cancer throughout an organization when you have this in a team. And obviously it's just as bad inside of a family. It can break a whole family apart because they'll do the same thing. And they create sides in an organization. They create sides in a family. They can basically polarize a family into two.
Absolutely.
But I think as growing leaders, they are probably one of the hardest ones to really identify, because they come in hot and strong and in love with everything in an organization, loving everybody, charming everybody to death. And once they feel a certain way, feel something's a threat to them, they start turning, and you just start seeing that they're not doing anything enough for you to say, hey, this was a violation of your job description, or this was a violation of the employee handbook. But you start seeing a threat to the culture. And just as much as this is important in personal life, I'm kind of using business as a metaphor to family or personal life. you have to be a leader and be comfortable enough to step up and put boundaries in place and give this person very clear, direct communication that I don't care that you haven't black and white broken a rule, but this behavior overall is insidious and it has bad consequences to the culture of this organization, and it has to stop. And I think that's where brave and courageous leaders come up, because the easy thing to do is to wait for a high conflict personality to cross over the line and say, gotcha, finally I can cut you out of my life, or I can cut you out of the organization, or I can finally divorce you, right?
Right.
But a narcissist typically will never give you that, because they have been itching and inching and inching away at this boundary, and to the point where people around don't even know where that line ever was anymore.
Exactly. And you mentioned a handbook, because we have been through some situations over the years. And I think at one point we thought, okay, how can we rewrite our handbook? You can't. You can, but it's
can you
not
write a narcissist-proof employee handbook?
It's not any more than you can write a narcissist-proof marriage.
Right.
Right. That's the whole point, is because they're going to take these, and you have to write handbooks and marriage relationships. I mean, you can't have black and white rules for that. Right. You have to have some give and take. So what does that mean? That means they're always going to be on the take. And I think that's one of the reasons that I am such a strong, especially when you have a manipulative person or a narcissist on the other side, that I am such a strong proponent of not going in a collaborative route. And the reason is the collaborative is just so...
You mean the collaborative route for a divorce?
Yes, for a divorce.
With a narcissist.
With a narcissist, or even kind of this... all right, we're going to try this super amicably and we're all going to agree not to go to court. The problem with that is those are boundaries, right? Those kind of situations exist with boundaries because they're meant to have a give and take. Right. That was the whole purpose of how they were built. The problem is when you have somebody who plays in that give and take, who breathes and breeds their narcissist in those give and takes, and they have nothing to hold them accountable, nothing that says, you know what, we see you, regardless of whether you've broken any laws or you've broken any rules, this isn't working and we're out, right? For us, and that's pulling the trigger and saying, you know what, we're going to have just go ahead and have the court decide this for us. I mean,
it is standard what you're describing, Shauna, game theory, right?
Yes.
Like game theory is when you have two opposing parties with two different conflict of interest trying to negotiate a deal, they can come together and do it collaboratively or amicably or in healthy negotiation process through mediation, whatever it is. If one thing is true, both parties value their self-interest. If narcissist self-interest can't be trusted, because sometimes a narcissist is willing to shoot themselves in the foot to take you down with them.
Absolutely.
So if it means draining all the family resources, including their own resources, in order to prove a point to you, in order to be a victim, in order to get their narrative across, they're willing to do so. I actually just had a conversation with a former client today that said to me, you know what? When I went through this divorce process with my ex-spouse, which was a narcissist, by her experience with him, the court forced us to go to mediation, but it was the biggest waste of time. I wish from day one we could have gone straight to court. And obviously we are all for the cases where both parties have a healthy level of self-interest. And what does that mean? Meaning that I am not going to shoot myself in the foot or shoot you in the foot because it's going to hurt both of us, right? It's sort of like that. If you go down, I'm going to go down too. So we can trust that foundation in negotiations. But when you don't have that, it is a complete waste of attorney's time and attorney's money, which means a client's waste of time and money to go through mediation and negotiations with somebody who's willing to go through the entire conflict dance, spend all the time and money on legal fees and resources to keep this drama going.
When they have children, that they're co-parenting together. I think one of the worst things I've seen is willing to mentally, verbally, sometimes physically abuse the children during the process in order to hurt the other person. Right. And playing in the gray, not being able to get into court to make that kind of stuff stop, really does have an effect on the children. You're thinking about the younger they are, the bigger the impact, because the shorter their life and their experiences are bigger, right? And I think that is, for me, one of the biggest things that I look at is your partner, I wouldn't take a client who did this, but is your partner that type of person who is willing to literally burn down the house with these children? Right, to take them down in order to hurt you. And every time you compromise, you give them a little bit of an inch to turn that around and have a knife back at you. And those are the ones I get very passionate about. Those are the ones I become very animated about, and saying, no, you let me be the bad guy. You let me take this to court. You let me tell this story, because you still get to save some face as a co-parent.
Right.
Where I get to be that, quote unquote, I'm not going to say the word blank attorney of yours that you used to have. Right.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think that's why I think playing in the gray, especially when you have children, just has to be a no-starter.
I mean, the children part is so important because, again, it goes back to this foundational piece of healthy self-interest. Yep. And if both parties don't have a healthy self-interest of, we're not going to drain resources just to get at each other, and we're not going to hurt the children just to get at each other, there is no negotiation to be had. Right. We joked about having a narcissist-proof employee handbook and relating it to what you're saying. Can you have a narcissist-proof parenting plan?
Absolutely.
Because this is where the playing in the gray really comes down to, is the narcissist post-divorce co-parenting with that person.
Yes.
And they are always doing things like dropping off the kid just a little bit late, picking up the kids just a little bit late, not fully exercising all their available parenting time, but being there enough, paying child support, maybe $50 short here and there, just enough for you to say, okay, you know what? Like, I don't want to have to go to court with this person. Oh my God, I don't have to deal with this person. And that's a very rational thinking to say, I do not want to have to deal with this person legally. I'm going to let it go. And the narcissist is counting on that. That's why they're playing in the gray. Like, I'm doing just enough to let you know I still control you. Because, control is a big thing for them. And it's just these small little passive aggressive meaningless things they do that causes enough headache for you, but possibly does it build a case? You don't know. And you don't know, is it me? Is this common? Is this what's supposed to happen post-divorce? Am I crazy? Or am I, is this person trying to make me crazy because they haven't had enough of the drama?
Yeah, and I do think that people should consult with an attorney at that point. Usually about a year after a divorce is what I call the settle down phase, right? You're no longer trying to antagonize. The emotions are not as high in most people. But if you have somebody who truly has some narcissistic personality tendencies, they are going to try to control you with these little things. And it's going to continue. And you have to make that decision, right? Is it so little that it's petty and it's silly and I look at them and kind of laugh anymore? Like, you silly little person. I'm sorry you never grew up. Or is it to the point where it is negatively infecting not only your well-being, your children's well-being, or your pocketbook, right? And those are the type of things where you have to say, all right, do I want to do battle? And it is battle. Okay, when you're up against a narcissist in a court system, I always consider it a battle.
Right.
And we always have to gear up for it. When you have somebody who is negatively affecting, like I said, your well-being, your children's well-being, or financially, decapitating you, basically, then I like to go for what I call the Pavlov dog effect. So this is a study in psychology where, very simple, everybody knows it. Everybody who has a pet knows this. Go shake your treats. The dogs are going to come running. Why are the dogs going to come running? Because they know they're about to get a treat. So there's a psychologist who did this and said, yes, when I ring the bell, these dogs come running because they know something good happens afterwards. And you can do it in the reverse. And this is what we're talking about. So every single time you are late on a payment, boom, you're right there with a letter from your lawyer. Every single time and I'm not talking about emergencies, guys. I'm not talking about this little, oh gosh, we ran into traffic this month.
Right.
We are talking about these systematic things that happens, and you all know what it is. And you do it so that every single time there is a reaction, right? And then you do have enough to build up and do something about it. The question I always ask our clients, what's your remedy? What are you looking for, right? And you have to have something concrete. Now, you don't know maybe what you're looking for until you talk to an attorney and see what your options are. What are the menu items that are available to me? And it may be with the financials, we get income deduction order, right? It may be with dropping off late and early. There's some repercussions for them, right? There are some built-in repercussions to the parenting plan so that you don't have to be wherever you're sitting, right? Maybe you're meeting out in public. Maybe we change the meeting place to your house so that they're late picking up and dropping off. You're still at least at your house and ready to go.
Right.
So there are small things that we can do and that can turn into a lot bigger things, right? To make your life easier. But again, you really have to look at this and say, am I ready to do battle with this person? And is what I'm going to do battle for going to bring me the peace of mind rather than having to, not do anything at all and put up with it, right? That's a cost benefit analysis, very personal, and only you know it. You know what you can put up with, right? But I do think therapy coming out of it before you go back into litigation.
Absolutely.
Deep therapy to understand not only how you get, I hate this word, triggered by your ex-spouse or your whoever else, but also to figure out, can I stop being triggered? Right. Can that stop being one of the buttons because they installed it and I want to have them not be able to push it? So I'm not somebody who jumps into litigation immediately. I'm like, did you do all these other things? Is it worth it to you? But that's what we're here for, is one of those times it's like, yeah, we have to stop this. That's what we're here for.
I mean, we definitely have seen cases. We have one now where our client divorced her spouse when their son was 2. Son is 18 now, and we're talking about, I believe, close to 16 years of underpaying child support, and she just did not want to have that. And she waited till he was out in college, and she's like, you know what? Like, I'm going to go after it now because I did not, being a single parent and having to work and take care of him and my child and making him not feel like he had a dad that wasn't taking care of him. I didn't want him to have that. But she knows she enabled a behavior for many, many years. And that's definitely I think if you make that decision, all we want for you to be an empowered decision, right? Yes. If you make the decision of, you know what, I'm just going to let it be, that is definitely a valid decision. But you need to make it from a place of empowerment versus, man, like this person's doing this to me again. From a victim mentality. I'll end it with this. When we're talking about playing in the gray, my mindset coach, David Nagel, who I've mentioned a few times, always said, the truth is always simple. If it takes a lot of explaining, it can't be the truth. You should be able to gain the truth in just a few words. And I think for those out there who are listening to this and question, am I crazy? Is this person crazy? Or am I being too sensitive? I don't know, like what was said, what was understood, all that. Just the lack of clarity alone should be a warning sign, should be alarm that somebody here, whether it's you or the other person, because all is so fair that you're not showing up being completely in direct communication. But if you show up having direct communication and as being as honest as possible and stop playing along with the narcissist language of tiptoeing around, and you're not getting that back in return, that should be your answer.
Yeah.
The truth is simple. Thank you, Shauna.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Happily Ever After Divorce podcast. If you'd like to learn more, go to atlantadivorcelawgroup.com/resources.